Okay, Mr. Spots, can you see the agenda?
Yes, I can see the agenda.
Okay, I believe you're ready.
All right, before we get started, we will do the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, our secretary, Melissa Hunziker, will take attendance.
Mr. Steve Allen.
Here.
Kern. Mr. Wayne Wentz.
Here.
Mr. Thomas McCarroll.
Here.
Mrs. Suzanne Howland. Mr. Kyle Spots.
Here.
Mr. Jonathan Cleaver.
Okay, any public comment on the agenda?
Mr. Bradley?
What recommendations will this committee be making to the board?
Mr. Bradley, we're just starting the meeting. There was nothing even discussed at this point.
Thank you. What recommendations will this committee be making to the board? I'm asking the board members.
Mr. Bradley, the agenda's up. You can.
One more time. I'm asking a very simple question. What official actions, what recommendations?
There is no official action. It's a committee meeting.
I understand.
And we just had this discussion at the last meeting. Do you have any questions on the agenda?
My question is simple. What recommendations will this committee be making to the governing board of this?
We have not even decided or had any discussion on any items on the agenda yet, Mr. Bradley. How could you predict what is going to be any type of recommendation? There is no official action.
Can I get that from a board member, please? Not from the subordinate person inside of this agency.
All right, Mr. Spots.
Can we get that from Larry or somebody, please?
Hold on, Ms. Bose.
Okay.
Larry?
Old business.
Wayne? Steve?
Sorry.
Bose?
On the position for spring sports, have we found out whether or not they would need to be paid if we did not hold the sports?
At this point, there is no legal requirement for the district to pay the individual if the sport does not take place. That was part of the pandemic law that was passed, and that law is no longer in compliance as of December 31st.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Spots, I'll turn it back over to you.
Okay, old business, just a copy of the budget expenditures to date. Mr. Cleaver, I believe you scroll down. There they are on that page. So you will see where we're at with our current budget. We've been well within the budget, but we do have expenditures coming up. I don't think we've gotten the winter transportation bills yet. all the winter workers, and we just ordered supplies for our spring sports seasons. So right now our budget looks pretty good for athletics. So any committee members have any comments on the budget? Okay. Mr. Cleaver, if you could scroll up to the agenda. We have some positions for spring sports that need to be filled. We have a head tennis coach position that we have posted multiple times. We did receive an applicant for the position, so we will be conducting interviews with that individual to discuss the position, and I believe as you'll see later in the meeting, the discussion of an agreement with Valley Royale to use the tennis courts. That individual application is contingent upon us as a school board reaching an agreement with to use those courts for our home site. So you'll probably see that on the agenda for this individual, as long as the interview process goes well for that position. In addition, we have a couple assistant coaching positions in softball and baseball, which we will be wrapping up interviews for that today, tomorrow. Myself, the head coaches, and Mrs. Howland, if she's available, will be sitting in on those interviews for baseball and softball positions. Athletics, building and grounds update. Nothing really at this time. Obviously, there's a lot of snow on the grounds right now. Spring sports are scheduled to start March 8th, so it'll be here sooner than later. So unless the weather breaks really soon and we get a warm stretch of weather, I doubt we will be outside. Obviously, when sports start, given the current situation and the amount of snow and the forecast for later in the week seems to suggest we will be getting additional snow. So I don't see us being outside for our spring sports, but once our facilities are available and able to be played on, we will get outside as soon as possible. Scuba League update. They held a meeting to discuss the team championships for wrestling. There's concern over the timing of them and the impact on individual districts. So the league voted. There's 12 league wrestling schools, and the majority was to cancel the wrestling championships. We voted against that. There's 3 schools that voted against canceling. We just felt that we shouldn't be limiting opportunities for the kids this year. So, but ultimately passed by a vote of 8 in favor of canceling, 3 against, and 1 school abstained. So that was the big issue with the Scuba League. The basketball championships are on as scheduled. They will start next week. Our teams will not be involved in those championships. District 11 team wrestling, they did not hold a team wrestling championship this year. They just, given the concerns with everything, they just opted not to hold that. Individual wrestling championships are this weekend coming up. Basketball is an open tournament this year, so our teams look like they were going to qualify no matter what. But now everybody is able to participate, and that was because some schools will not be able to play the minimum number of events this year to qualify. So because of cancellations, postponements, etc., so they just allowed anybody to participate in districts this year for basketball. And cheerleading, they pushed back the cheerleading district championships to later in the year. They're still looking for a facility to host that, but normally they are held by this point in the season, but they push back. So the plan is still to continue with all the winter sports championships for District 11. And I have not heard anything on a delay or anything with spring sports. I think spring sports will start on time. They are outdoors for all the sports that we have. So I think we'll see similar to the fall, where everything was held outdoors except for volleyball in the fall. Same with the spring. We have baseball, softball, track, and tennis. So those outdoor events, I do not see having an issue. Host those. I have not been told anything at this point, any delays or anything from PIAA. Like I said, the season starts March 8th, so we're rapidly approaching that date. We have about 2.5 weeks until the spring sports season starts. PIAA update, there really hasn't been much since they established the time frame for winter sports. Everything seems to have been going forward with the winter sports and championships, and the start time of spring sports is on as scheduled, as mentioned previously. Some new business to discuss. We have a request for the Lehigh Area Booster Club to use our stadium for track and field this year. There will be a use of facility request submitted to the board for approval on Monday's agenda. That is held outside. The facilities that they would request to use would be the restrooms that we typically allow them to use every year, and then they have requested the concession stands, but we have not allowed concession stand usage, and it's not encouraged to be allowed throughout the athletic season this year. So I told them that would probably not be able to be included in their usage. So right now they're just looking for the facility usage of the track and the stadium, and then along with the bathrooms, obviously in case their participants need to use the restrooms. The track and field usage is typically a couple hours each evening throughout the season, and I work with them on their schedule. Days we have meets, obviously their time frame is limited, but days that there's track practice, it's usually done by 5 or 5:30, and I believe they start right after that. So, and then they also use it a couple hours on a Saturday morning for practices if needed. So you'll see that on the agenda at the board meeting on Monday. In addition, new business, we have an agreement for Valley Royale. I believe Mr. Cleaver has a copy of it, but it was updated since Mr. Cleaver got a copy. I got an updated version from Mrs. Everett from Valley Royale, which I did send it to Mr. Filer to review to see if there was any issues on it last week. So there was some additions to what you see here on it, and that'll be submitted to the board for approval. The cost is the same on the agreement. It's more or less some additional verbiage in there that I will make sure the board gets for review prior to the meeting on Monday. But this would be a lease agreement for our tennis team to use the tennis courts at Valley Royale, which was formerly the Maple Tree Tennis Club, which is where we used our courts and practices and events prior to them closing. Once they closed, we have been playing at Palmerton since that happened, but now we have the opportunity to go back to that venue. It's obviously closer, it's within the school district. And as I mentioned previously, we do have an individual who applied for the head tennis coach position contingent upon an agreement established at that venue. And I understand the concerns with traveling to Palmerton and having all away matches as opposed to being able to practice couple miles from the school and have home tennis matches, etc. So I understand the concerns from that individual on the venue. As I mentioned, that this agreement will be included in your packet for the board meeting to discuss at Monday's meeting. So, any questions or comments from the committee members? Any other business that they would like to discuss at this time?
Small question. For the Booster Club I know they have a track meet. Are we gonna give them permission to set up, if they wished, their own refreshment area? Or is nothing gonna be allowed other than having the track meet?
I mean, that's ultimately up to the, whatever, I mean, I know we have our recommendation from Lehigh Valley, Sports Network, which is for our events is, and the PIAA is recommending, to limit the amount of exposure out there, which includes concession stands and areas like that. So, that's why we have not allowed it. We did not allow it in the fall. We did not allow it during the winter sports seasons this year. So, I just don't know how to justify to our own groups that we not allow them, but we may allow somebody else to do it on their property. You know what I mean?
So maybe that should be part of our agreement, that there will be no concession at all.
If we
That
could-
someone doesn't, misconstrue it and say, well, no, we couldn't use their refreshment stands, but why can't we have our own? I
And
think we
that's-
should,
Yeah, and that's consistent with what we've done with our groups throughout the year, for our events. So I think if that's something that you guys want to recommend, I have no problem with passing that information on to, John, who's in charge of the track program with them. I think that's it's inconsistent with what we've done all year. So, so I could let him know that, and that could be, we can adjust his request, when we submit it for Monday, to have that as no concession stand usage.
that's just my feeling on it, but, I mean, I realize it's a financial thing for them, that they would make monies on it, but like everyone else, whether it be our basketball or football parents, whoever, they didn't make monies either. We just have to all bite the bullet this year, and hopefully next fall we can start kicking in and starting fresh and getting everything going again.
Wayne, are you good with that? If I reached out to him and let him know that's kind of what we've done from the beginning, so that would probably be my recommendation for the usage.
Yes, and also we're talking May, correct? When they have their track meet?
I could get you the exact date. Give me a second. I believe the track date is usually early June, I want to say, but if you give me 1 minute, I'll get you the answer exactly. The use of facility form sitting out on my Missy's desk, so she ran and grabbed it quick.
Yeah, like I said, hopefully things could change by then, but for now, I totally agree with you and Steve, we'll just hold off on the concession stands, and hopefully everybody gets vaccinated and things change, and maybe we can help them out,
Yeah.
but.
Yeah, so the request would start April 1st for practices, and then the tentative track meet would be June 5th with the rain date of June 6th. So,
Okay, sounds good,
okay?
yes.
Okay, so I will reach out to him and let him know that we will pass this forward to the board for approval, but limit the opportunities for the concession stand this year. So, okay,
Yes,
Yeah, Kyle, it's Larry. I joined a little late. The only concern then, I just don't know, we don't know what we'll be doing for graduation either, So
Right.
I'm not sure how that, and if Mr. Cleaver and Ms. Holland has a date of when graduation would be, if that doesn't conflict, if it is a possibility that we can have an outside graduation, that would be great for the kids.
yeah, looking at the schedule, I think June 11th is the tentative. I know we've had snow days, so I would assume that would be the earliest we would have graduation would be the June 11th date. So, so I think we would have a week after this. So I think we could pull this off without having impacts on graduation.
Yeah, because June, the setup usually starts that week. We either
Yeah, we would probably start setting up Monday or Tuesday of the week of graduation.
Yeah, and I concur with Steve's recommendation on no concession at all, even if it's their private concession. Thank you.
Okay. Any other discussion or items from the committee members before we turn it over to public comment?
nothing here,
None for me.
Okay, Mr. Cleaver, is there any comments from the public?
Mr. Bradley?
Prior to making those recommendations, didn't you have an obligation under the Sunshine Act to allow the public to speak? Larry, Wayne, Steve? Maybe you didn't hear me. Larry, Wayne, Steve, didn't you have an obligation to seek public comment prior to making those recommendations? Larry, Wayne, Steve, directors. Seven ten of the Sunshine Act. Larry,
Any other questions, Mr.
Wayne,
Bradley?
Steve. Yeah, I'd like to make a formal objection to this meeting, have it negated and redone under the Sunshine Act, which it was construed as a committee meeting of the agency. Larry, Wayne, Steve, any comment?
Thank you, Mr. Bradley. Yes, ma'am.
But it's needed. My question is, since it's an athletic stadium, and the budget looks pretty good for athletics, depending on what the cost would be going forward, would it be possible to move monies from the athletic budget to building and grounds to help complete that repair to the old stadium so that it's usable?
I
I could have that, I talked to Ed, now I know, the athletics budget was budgeted similar to building and grounds where it was just budgeted towards what we spent last year, so we did not have a spring sports season, so, that we have been, scaling back to only necessities this year to see where we're at with everything, so, when I meet with Ed this week, to discuss some things, I can definitely discuss some options on that item specifically and see what options we have for that.
Well, it would have to be a deep dive into both budgets to look, because I don't remember if it was 15,000 or 45,000. I think it was 45,000 for the repair.
It was more than 15, I know that, so I don't know exactly what it was, but it was definitely more than 15.
And it was just a thought that it might be able to get repaired and then be usable. If that's not an option, renting porta potties for the area would supply bathroom facilities, and bottled water and coolers would supply drinks if needed. That would be the only other option, but you would have to look at the budgets very carefully. And I do believe it was quite a bit of lead time when ordering it. Something that should be looked into now, so hopefully it could be usable for the fall sports season. But that was just my thought on it.
Okay, thank you, and as mentioned in the previous, I'll follow up. We have a meeting and it should probably be, next meeting's March 9th, I believe. So, yeah, we'll meet then and discuss it.
No other comments, Mr.
Any other comments, Mr. Cleaver?
No, sir.
All right, any other committee comments before we adjourn the meeting? And just to note, the next meeting is scheduled for Tuesday, March 9th. It says March 11th on there, but it's Tuesday, March 9th at 10 a.m. So. Okay, I'm good on my end, so if there's any other comments or anything,
Nope.
We're good.
take a motion to adjourn the meeting then.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you, everyone, for attending.